The Greeks were known as the great thinkers, and the Romans were known as the great builders, the great doers. And today we'll be talking about what did they build and their kind of incredible accomplishments that they had through Roman architecture. And you'll start to be picking up when you look around town and you see famous buildings. You say, hey, that looks Roman. It does have some kind of Greek elements and then has a nice Roman twist. And that's basically what we end up with. One big feature that you see in Roman architecture is the idea of the arch. Now, the arch is important because an arch, as you can see right here, the shape of the arch is going to be able to use to carry a lot of weight. You can have a lot of compressive force coming down on top of it, and as long as it's coming fairly straight down, this force will go directly into the ground, into the bottom. It can't basically go and take a lot of twisting movement, but the idea of a force can come into the ground through an arch and make it really, really strong. The problem is you got to make sure these arches don't blow out at the bottom because of this force, so it's going to have to be, I don't want this to fly out. So usually there'll be like a wall or something like that to retain it. Now the arch is seen all over Rome. The Romans they didn't exactly invent the arch, but they actually got it from the Etruscans. They went and were able to go and perfect the arch. They were the ones that really used it to its full capabilities. And part of this is is called a triumphal arch. Now, if you use the word triumph today, that's like a great victory and, you did something really cool. The triumph was a parade that you had in ancient Rome if you had done something really cool, usually a military victory. Specifically later when we get in the period of the Roman Empire, they would have the triumph for a Roman emperor, if there was like a new emperor, and they have the parade and all that fun stuff. I'll show you on the next couple slides a couple famous triumphal arches, but the idea is when you actually build a triumphal arch, it's usually at the cost of the person who's building it. It may be used as a sign of propaganda to say, hey, look at me, I'm the best ruler ever, and it's kind of going in and showing how important you are. So a triumphal arch is a special arch used by political leaders to go and display their points. Now, basically, the concept of an arch and like a kind of 360 twisting it all the way around of going in and accepting these compressive forces but putting it into a different shape is a dome. Now, the Romans also go and perfect the idea of the dome, which it makes sense because it's kind of based off of the architecture or the physics of the arch. I'm not a physics expert, but you kind of understand the concept that it can hold a lot of weight. Now, the most famous building in Rome, or one of the most, is the Pantheon. Not the Parthenon, don't get that mixed up. Pantheon, Parthenon, very similar spelled. The Pantheon was a religious building. It actually is later used as a church today, but it was used to honor all of the different Roman gods and goddesses. They're the same, if you know, as the Greek ones, they just have a couple different names. The Pantheon is famous because it has a big hole in the top. It took 3 years to build, and you can go still visit today. It's the largest freestanding dome in the world that's not reinforced. So it's a pretty crazy building. Here's the Triumphal Arch of Orange, and this one's unique because as a triumphal arch, it's not really an arch, it's 3 arches. It's a triple arch. And on these triumphal arches, what you'll have is you'll have the arch, you'll have the parade, and they would go right through it. And then you have propaganda on the side, showing the ruler, maybe saying how great the ruler is, etc., etc. Now this is the Arch of Titus, very, very famous arch. There is recorded that there's a lot of these arches that exist in ancient Rome, but unfortunately we don't really have that many left. The Arch of Titus was built by, Titus was a Roman emperor, was built by his younger brother Domitian after Titus died. And what happened was, in 70 AD, the Romans came in control of the Jews. The Romans take over control of the Greeks. We talked about the Maccabees. And then the Romans are going to take control of the Jews, and that sets the context for Jesus in that story. But later, in 70 AD, the Jews are going to rebel. And Emperor Titus goes and sacks Jerusalem. And this triumphal arch is going and celebrating what happened during the sack of Jerusalem. Here's a view under the arch. And here the spoils, actually, you can see there, the menorah. They actually destroyed the temple It was absolutely horrible. The Jewish people living there trying to go and prevent the Romans from taking anything would swallow gold coins to smuggle them out of the city. And the Romans were known for actually cutting up the Jews' stomachs to go and take the coins out of there. Very, very brutal event. And from a Jewish perspective, absolutely awful. But going to a Roman perspective, it was a great thing. So great that they decided to go and make a triumphal arch about it. Now here's the Pantheon, the front side. You can't really see the dome here, but you can see it in the back. I'll show you in a sec. So there's the back side of the Pantheon used to go and celebrate the different Roman gods and goddesses. Here's a view on the inside, and you actually see this is a real hole on the top. Sunlight comes right through it. It's called an oculus. And another shot. You can see it's been turned into a church. If you look, you can see like Virgin Mary. Italy obviously is a super Catholic country, and I won't say it here, but do you know what type of columns those are? You should know. Raphael, one of the later Renaissance painters, you'll learn about him in the spring semester. He was actually buried inside the Pantheon. There's his bust right there. UVA, designed by Thomas Jefferson. You can see the Rotunda. The reason I'm showing this is that you can see a lot of, especially if you've been to Washington, a lot of the architecture is inspired off of ancient Rome. Now, the baths. I love the Roman baths because you can actually go and visit some of them. They still exist, and you can visit. There's a town in England. It's not really a town. It's more of a city than a town, called Bath, which is known because it had the Roman baths, because England was part of the Roman territory, or called the thermae. Now, the Roman baths were a social gathering place for people. They would go, it's the equivalent of going to like kind of a gym. It included some gym elements, but mainly what it is, the way you want to think about it, is like going to the sauna or the spa. So you go to the spa to kind of hang out. There's a different area for men, a different area for women, and they're going to go hang out. You'll spend a few hours there, have a good time. You'll get cleaned up. You'll go into the 3 different rooms we're going to talk about here in a second. And it's just kind of an interesting, it's like the focal point of the area. In order to go, if you're really wealthy and you wanted people in the city to like you, you might build a bath. And the public baths were either free at times or you had to pay to go enter. But sometimes, like, if you own the bath and you're a super rich person in the city, maybe you would buy a bath day for everybody. You'd go to the bath, and there's 3 types of rooms. And if you kind of know your root words, you'll know which one's which. There's the Caldarium, the Tepidarium, and the Frigidarium. The Caldarium is hot, like a caldera, like a volcano. That's the hot room. It's the steam room. And actually, in these rooms, you could go, and they have fires, basically, that slaves are going to go and be furnacing the fires, and it's going to create steam, and it's like going to a modern sauna. The Tepidarium, tepid's in the middle, so it's like a medium room temperature type part of the bath. And then the Frigidarium is the cold part, like going and taking, athletes go and jump into a cold ice bath, something like that. There was not actually extensive soap at the time, so what you would do is put oil on your body, and then you would take basically a piece of metal and scrape the oil off your body to clean yourself. You would maybe have a slave do that as well. It was common as well to go and have people steal all your clothes while you're at the bath, so got to keep an eye on your items there. So here's some of the remains of some of the Roman baths. They would have, we'll talk about the aqueducts, but they would go and have water transported. This is in Bath, England. Now, what you have to imagine here, this is the Caldarium, the hot room. What you have to imagine is pretend that there's a floor on top of here, and see these little pillars. What would happen is there'd be this floor on top, and where these pillars are, that's where the heat would be circulating, would be going under this room, and then from there, that's where it would create the idea of the sauna. Roads. The Romans go and are known for perfecting the roads. You know the old phrase, all roads lead to Rome, because they did. It was kind of actually backwards to think about. All roads left from Rome, hence the reason they led to Rome, but something to think about. And their most famous road is the Appian Way, or the Via Appia. The Roman roads are known for going and being able to go and provide steady, reliable transportation. Because think about it, if it's made out of dirt or mud, if it rains, you're out of luck. This road right here And the way it's flowing, it's going to, debris, if it's raining, will flow off into the kind of these gutters at the side. And that can continue, facilitates trade, exchange, specifically during the period of Pax Romana. Little look at the Appian Way. It's a big road, as you can see. Different milestones would go and mark, where you are along these Roman roads. They're built straight. They'll go and build them all over the empire, connecting and creating an efficient system. And another look as well at the Roman road. Now the aqueducts are pretty cool because what the aqueducts do is they're going to go and bring water into the cities from far across places. Now the aqueducts, some people look at them and they don't understand exactly how they work, but the principle is actually pretty simple. Water flows downhill. Simple thing. You have something that's slightly going, and that was not a straight line, but that's an aqueduct that's exaggerated to a large extent. And what would happen if it goes downhill? The water is going to flow down this way. So it's almost imperceptible at times to the human eye. So what you have here is you have a bunch of arches here who are going, and let's assume there's a lake or something up here, and we want to get to the city down here. Well, if we go and just barely have this aqueduct go at this angle, the water is going to flow. Basically, it flows through that the area that I just drew there, and the water is going to flow down to the city. It doesn't even have to be a steep angle. The aqueducts, what happens here is this aqueduct is crossing over a river. You can't have a sudden drop-off because water doesn't really flow uphill. Not exactly the way our world works. So downhill, and the water will flow into the city, and they have fresh water, which funds the baths. They have fountains, all that fun stuff. Another look at a famous Roman aqueduct, and you get the concept of both the water transportation and the arch. This is actually inside what the aqueduct looks like. This is where the water would have been flowing. They're covered, so that's what people don't understand, is that the aqueduct is covered, and that's where it's like if you were going to go on the water slide ride of your life, that's where the water would have been flowing from. And last but not least, the good old Roman toilets. Romans were known for going, and they had public toilets that you could go to. This is where people would go sit on and do their business. And men and women could possibly go and be sitting next to each other, kind of gross. But they would go and have their sewage system. It would go into basically a common sewer and then flow out the city, below the city, and go down the river. And can you tell which guy is real there? That's basically a kind of a mock-off of the Roman toilets. So there you go. Roman architecture. Pretty interesting stuff. A lot of different features, and they get specifically incorporated into today's world as well.